All the singers had wrong haircuts. They were dressed like office clerks, and they sang like Brezhnev at the Communist Party Congress. Soviet culture has been totally unsexy, very rigid, too limited. There was nothing bright and free and funky and sexy and funny about it. And of course, these qualities were exactly the vitamins that our bodies needed.
In the mid-60s, ingenious Beatles fans found a way to make their own bootlegs. Their secret weapons were street-side recording booths where homesick soldiers could make sound letters for their moms. After hours, fans would turn up with tapes of Beatles songs illicitly recorded from Radio Luxembourg.
And you could do the recording of Beatles songs. At the beginning, they did it on the used X-rays, which they collected from trash in the medical institutes or in clinics or hospitals. And so there was the machine with the needle, which was scratching grooves on this X-rays.
A black market mushroomed, fed by records on ribs. So kids could listen to I Feel Fine on Uncle Sergei's lungs.
I used to buy ribs when I was a kid. There was a guy keeping it in a sleeve, flexible, flexi discs. So they had, because it was prohibited, in his sleeve, flexis, 3 rubles. Okay, you want a shakes, you want a rock and rolls. Shake was dance, you know, shake. You want some rock and rolls? You want some shakes? 3 rubles. What's this? It's good rock and roll. This was very dangerous for people who sold it. It was prohibited.
Shrugging off official disapproval, the Beatles virus raged across the Soviet Empire. In Minsk, 500 miles from Moscow, Yuri Pelushanok caught the bug.
But yes, and it's so awfully good, you know, and so nice that you fall in love when you hear this. And you can just feel it, you know, it's in the air. I can explain you. But everybody knows it. It's like, if my mom would like to tell me to have a haircut, she would say, you're worse than a Beatle, you know?
По-моему, немножко много. Он фанат Битлов. Не то, что недоразумение, а нужно было и другими делами заниматься. А он, когда рос, для него Битлы – это были боги.
In Kiev, too, the Beatles virus was unstoppable. Nikolai Poturayev was a schoolboy back then.
They opened the whole world. And in fact, my decision to go to the university, to the Faculty of English Language and Literature, and my interest to English spoken culture, it was all brought by them, by the Beatles. And you know, this feeling of freedom, it's like you meet friends after a long period of being alone.
In St. Petersburg, Sergei Ivanov caught the Beatles virus. The boy who would grow up to be Russian defense supremo and Vladimir Putin's deputy prime minister confesses he still has symptoms of the infection he caught more than 40 years ago.
Здравствуйте, товарищи!
That was 62, 63. I was a kid, around 10 or 11 years age, average Soviet kid. And I tuned to the radio station and heard music. I suspect it was Love Me Do. Still remember that. Then the Beatlemania started, including the Soviet Union, by the way. In that sense, the Soviet Union was a normal European country, except one thing, the Beatles didn't come.
Of course, the Soviet Union was far from a normal country, and the young Ivanov was probably tuned illicitly to Radio Luxembourg. But ignoring official hostility, Soviet kids continued to track down Beatles music.
I became a Beatles fan. I know most of their songs. I still remember them. And hearing the Beatles music, I'm sure now, it helped me to learn English language properly. I woke up and I made my bed, dragged a comb across my head. That was the first time I learned what the word comb means in Russian. By the way, I still remember that.
Мы пионеры, юные ленинцы. По-ленински жить и трудиться – наша большая мечта.
In the Soviet Union, official propaganda was one thing, but real life was totally different.
The Beatles became such a phenomenal thing in the Soviet Union because they came in the very right time with the very right kind of music. The timing has been perfect because, say, if it happened 2 or 3 years earlier, i.e. in the very beginning of the 60s, I think that their music would fall on a far less fertile ground. In 61, 62, we've had a very powerful agenda of our own in the Soviet Union. We've had our own global superhero, Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. And we've had, these also long-haired and bearded romantic revolutionaries in Cuba. We've had our own charismatic leader, Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, who promised to bury the United States and to build communism in 20 years' time. Communism, of course, was a kind of ideal utopian society, and we believed it. So at that time, it was really cool to be a Soviet. Then, in 1964, of course, Mr. Khrushchev has been kicked out and replaced by a bunch of much more boring guys. And this is how the decades of so-called stagnation have started. And this is exactly when the Beatles' music started slowly to infiltrate the Soviet mass consciousness.
And it was then that Kolya Vassin began his long obsession with the Beatles.
Вот с этого, это нулевая отметка, с этого все начиналось. А вот железный занавес, знаменитый железный занавес, каким мы его увидели в 60-е, 50-е годы в России. Вот моя тень, вот я слушаю рок-н-ролл, и вот я пробиваю этот железный занавес и выхожу в мир музыки и свободы. Биттлз. World. Our world. Here an article about Beatles in a Russian press. They say shitting Beatles. Very bad article, very bad article. That's communist. When I saw this article, I say Soviet is bad state, and I make immigration to free territory of Russia. In 64 year, I say to me in my soul, I will live without Soviets, only in my room with the Beatles. To young people, they say Beatles is bad.
Эстрадный квартет Битлз. Поль Маккартни, Джордж Харрисон. Посмотрите, как они элегантны. А в начале своей карьеры четверка выходила